All right, friends, here we are with our pineapple kit. We're gonna unpack this first just so you can see what you got in here. When you open it up, you've got a bowl and your own safety glasses. You'll also find a runner, glass cutter, pair of tweezers, your very own scoring tool, and a Sharpie to help you out with that. In the plastic bag, you've got your colors of glass to use and your little at-home kit or directions to walk you through creating, cleaning up, how to transport your projects. We've got some tips in there, and also lots of tips on glue, and then how to drop off your piece, and of course the list of other kits that we get to create together. A little supply checklist so you can see all the things that we stuck in the kit for you, and then a tag to fill out that tells us how you want your project shaped. And if you'll notice, all those display options, table stands and garden stands, are 20% off for you for this pineapple as well. And then your pineapple template, base piece, and finally your wooden board. Now, normally in the studio, the wooden board is where you put your project, but while you're at home, I want you to use that as your cutting board and set your project off to the side. The lines that are on your template are to help you line up your base piece. I oriented this in the diamond position so it by default fits in those garden stands or table stands, and if you opt to get some hangers or a hanger, we'll hang that on the diagonal for you as well. You can choose to turn that square, and then we could put the two hangers up here and you could hang that project as well. However, on the square like this, it does not fit into a garden stand. So we are gonna start by creating yellow squares to lay out for our pineapple, and then we'll go into building our green stems. Now, first off, safety first, we're working with mosaic. Put those safety goggles on. And with your different colors of glass, pull all of that out. And then it's up to you which colors of yellow or the amber that you wanna use for this. I really like it with the opaque on the bottom and then pieces of the transparent on top, but you choose. To cut out squares out of this piece of glass, we want to start with our scoring tool. You can also start with the Sharpie and create yourself some different squares if you want. The template is sized so that you get a good big pineapple on this base piece, and to get squares or squares that are approximately the same width as these, you can line up that piece of glass and put the edge on one of those squares, and then over here create that other edge. Now, if you want to score a good straight line, we can use the side of one of the big pieces of glass as a straight edge. When you use the scoring tool, hold it up here where it's textured like you hold a pen or a pencil. Where the two angles come together at the bottom is a little wheel. That wheel needs to make contact with the glass. And we're gonna remember three things when we use the scoring tool. Number one, hold that tool nearly straight up and down on the glass. Two, lean into it. And three, we're gonna push or pull all the way across from one edge of the glass to the other. Now, to use the glass as your straight edge, if you need a ruler or if you would like a straighter edge, place your scoring tool first. Make sure you're at the right angle. It needs to be tipped back just a hair so you can see the little bolt that's on the top of your scoring tool. Then you'll bring the glass to the scoring tool, line up the bottom edge, and then pull or push all the way from one edge of the glass to the other. You don't want to line up your glass and then place your scoring tool. Because of the way it's designed, it has a little bit of an edge, and so it's not going to scratch exactly where you want it. Now, to break off these pieces, you're going to use your runner. Make sure your gold bolt is pointed up towards the ceiling, and the gold line that's on top of your tool, you want to line that up directly on top of your scratch so both lines go in the same direction. And then squeeze like you're using scissors to break that glass apart. Now, another thing that you can do when you're scoring and trying to get a lot of squares is that we can draw or you can cut a grid. I'm gonna draw so that you can see the different, or you can see about where I'm gonna scratch. Please don't worry about scratching exactly on top of your lines that you draw out. The lines are for an approximation. They are not they're not exactly where you have to break the glass. And then I'm gonna scratch all the way across from one edge of the glass to the other. Break off a bunch of these, all of these pieces, and then you get to break those apart. If you do mess up with the Sharpie and you want to start over, you can wash the Sharpie off with some glass cleaner. The Sharpie will burn off in the kiln, so you don't need to worry about a black line showing up on your final project. Now, another way to cut some, give your squares or rectangles some personality is to use the glass cutters to cut out your squares from this rectangle. Where the discs come together is the point at which they break the glass. And I'm gonna bring those discs together about halfway in between the edge and create my triangle, or squares, excuse me, this way. So that's another way to create those squares that you want. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on this opaque piece of glass. And again, I'm gonna draw some lines on here so that you see about where I'm gonna cut the glass. Again, Sharpie burns off in the kiln. You don't have to draw on your glass. I just want you to be able to see where I'm going to scratch the glass, or approximately where I'm gonna scratch the glass. The key is from one edge of the glass to the other. Now, to break all of those squares off, I'm gonna use the runner. I'm gonna break this one first. If your gold bolt is not pointed towards the ceiling, it doesn't matter how hard you squeeze the glass is not going to break. So line up your gold line on top of your scratch. Gold bolt points towards the ceiling. Double check that you've got glass sticking out of both sides of the tool, and squeeze like you're using scissors to break that glass apart. Cut up all of these little squares here. When you're scoring and you're using your scoring tool, I want you to remember two words. I want you to score with confidence and score with determination, because that gives you a good crisp line that'll break off just that easy, like you just saw. Now, laying these designs out, we're gonna kind of match these squares together, make a little bit of a plaid, alternating the pale yellow with that darker yellow. It doesn't matter if our pieces don't fit exactly together. When these melt, when this project melts in the kiln, it will, these little gaps will close up on our project. So we don't have to worry about seeing little gaps in our piece. Now, laying all these pieces out, you'll notice we did what I like to call mass produce. So mass produce your squares, and then you get to kind of pick and choose which ones that you want to use. And again, not really worried about them lining up exactly square. It's kind of fun when they get a little off center. It's going to give your pineapple some personality anyways. Now, you can get kind of picky down here around the edge. For some of these pieces, maybe if you have something smaller, that's going to work. Please don't worry about staying exactly inside of this design or this template. Do with it what you will. Now, to fill in these extra little pieces, I've got all these squares, but I want to give my pineapple a little bit of a round shape. So one thing that you can do is lay out that square, but then you see the template behind it, and so we kind of want to cut and make this not a square anymore. Use your glass cutters for that. And this is where your bowl, and if you have a towel or a rag at home, this will come in handy because we want to keep the glass from flying around. Put the discs about halfway in between those edges. Turn your discs up and then clip off those pieces. Doesn't have to be super precise. And then when you lay that piece down, it fits a little bit closer inside the edge. This one, I need to make a triangle out of it. So just so you can see where I'm gonna cut that triangle just about in half. Oh, I don't even, that's wrong on my color pattern. Let's see, this guy's gonna fit right here. This one is gonna fit over here. Look at that. Just play Tetris with your puzzle pieces and go from there. Now building our pineapple, we can layer on top of what shows up here. So I might want to do that, but I might swap this out for something a little smaller as well. Get some of those triangles in there. Now, if you know you need a lot of triangles, just clip your squares in half, lay out those different pieces and go from there. It looks like I need a pale one over here. I need a bigger one over here. So wherever you have doubts about what your shape needs to be, use the Sharpie, clip as close as you can or want to the piece. Remember that the edges get soft in the kiln, so we're not really worried about when we have rough edges or little flexible edges. That's all fine and dandy. So that's gonna work out really well with your piece. So we're not worried about that. I'm gonna make a little triangle for here. Now, if you might have heard me say I need this, but I don't really need this. It's more about what I want out of these shapes. Making some random triangles to fit in here. I need another one right in there. Now, if you like Tetris or puzzles, this might feel a little more intuitive to you. If you are not a fan of Tetris or not a fan of puzzles, you know, keep working at it. It might not feel like it's working out very well for you, but I promise, keep working at it. It is going to come together. I'm gonna cut not a whole lot off of one square. To create this last little piece down here. More like this. There we go. All right. Now I might square some things up, squish some things in. I don't really like that one. I like a lot of symmetry, so when it's not very symmetrical, I struggle with it, with the pieces a little bit, but I'm gonna try and be flexible here and not worry about how precise my cutting is. If it were a real pineapple, I'd be cutting it open anyways. So now I've got those pieces laid out. I'm gonna lift it up for you so you can see how it is different, a little different than the template. So you can see how I have all those pieces laid out, and all those little gaps will fuse into each other. Now, let's make some leaves for the top of our pineapple. And to do this, I'm gonna start and show you on the transparent green because it's going to, the Sharpie's gonna show up a little bit more. But I'm gonna cut some triangles, but I also wanna cut a couple of arches out of here. So do, you know, some fan motions. And you might end up cutting some of those later, but we're gonna use the scoring tool so we can go edge to edge. One trick with the scoring tool is not to hold it directly in front of your body. You wanna hold it off to the side. So I'm right-handed, so it's gonna be more off to my side. And then when we create an arch, we're gonna use our whole arm like we steer a bicycle. So get your elbow involved. Create those different arches. And again, don't worry about it being super exact on those Sharpie lines. And to break it off a little bit easier, if you go where the glass is wider, instead of where my triangles come together, it's gonna work a little better. Ooh, double click. All right, now when you lay these out, we're not going for, you notice I didn't trace these out. I don't want exact shapes, but I am a fan of proportion. So I opted to cut so I'm about the same size. And then for some of these smaller shapes, where I want pieces to fit a little differently, I'm going to clip or cut some of these pieces off Now we're gonna layer, so we're not worried about gaps that show up down here or that we're leaving right here. And one way that I've found to be successful putting this together, instead of cutting curves to be down here, cut yourself an angle. So you have kind of a triangle that you're sticking in. So again, I'm using the Sharpie to show you what that looks like. You can use your scoring tool or your glass cutter for something that size. And when you break that off, then you're getting your pieces that kind of fit in with those colors. Now for something like this, again, cut off and make an angle at the bottom instead of an arch, and then those pieces fit together. Now I'm going to do the same thing here with the opaque green, and I'm going to turn it so my leaves are going to be a little bit shorter. I'm not actually sure that they're called leaves on a pineapple, but we're going to go for it. And again, score with confidence, score with determination, and you'll be able to get a nice clean cut. Now I want to hold it over and draw approximately where I want to cut. That helps me get the length. It's not about these pieces at the bottom nesting together exactly. I am going more for a good length for the top of that piece. And then I think I want something kind of really skinny right in here. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to measure right there and cut that off so I can get one more piece of dark green up there. Oops. Watch out, almost messed it up, but I didn't mess it up. I would just put it back together. All right, now I'm going to start layering on top because I want to add, as you can see, I want to add a few more colors, and we can do what we call cover or bridge the gap. So we can put glass on top of those gaps where those pieces don't fit together and cover those up, so then you'll get some more depth on your piece, but you'll also get to eliminate those little spots. Now that towel that you had, you can also use that to sweep off some of the little pieces. The little pieces are really what get you, so be a little bit careful when you're using the when you're working with the glass and those little pieces. Maybe make sure you know where the band-aids are. Mine are right next to me in our little first aid kit that we have here at the second studio, full of band-aids. We tend to need them more than anybody else. So I'm gonna lay that down. Let's see what else I got over here. Maybe I'll put something this way, and I think I'm gonna try the glass cutters for this shape. Use the glass cutters, use the scoring tool, whatever works best for you in this design. And again, we can also go over and get on top of the yellow, so we don't have to, again, whatever, if it looked funky up there to you, those yellow pieces, cover them up and go with that. I think I'm going to use another piece of transparent green. You can layer transparent on top of transparent. You can also layer the opaque or the not see-through glass on top of the transparent. Just, layer whatever, is going to work best for you. Now I think I'm going to sneak one more piece in here. Let's see what color I want that to be. I think I'm going to go for opaque. And you can see I'm going to try and do something kind of weird in this triangle here. But I think what I might want to do is just use this piece. I'm going to clip off this little corner so I can make that a corner. And then I have clipped it off so I made an angle. And then I'm going to get that piece right there. And then that gives me, I'm going to slide this over for you. That gives me the top for my pineapple. Might make some adjustments there. There we go. Now, for the rest of your project, how do we you know, design or decorate this, well, that's where all of these little scraps come in. You can use all of these pieces around the edge. The other colors come into play to give our pineapple some accents. Now to give your pineapple some accent color, again, whatever color you have left over, maybe you would use some of the opaque glass in here, but I'm going to use this amber, and I'm going to cut off some thin strips because I'm just going to want little pieces. And this gives our pineapple some accents. Now on these thin strips, you break off those rectangles, and again, score with confidence, score with determination. And I'm going to clip off and I'm going to make some little squares out of this, so just use your glass cutters. Clip, clip, clip. Make those little squares. And then add those into your pineapple. I'm going to use these. I'm choosing to put that amber on top of the opaque glass to add these little accents into the pineapple. Almost good enough to eat. Man, I really do miss some good pineapple. So we lay out these different pieces. Get your little accents in here. Again, they don't have to be super precise. They can be as precise as you want to, but they don't need to be super precise. I'm going to create a few more. So I'm going to catch the edges, and I'm going to try and make some little triangles out of these. Remember, put the discs where they come together, halfway in between your edges. Add a couple of these out here on the edge where I have some of this opaque glass hanging out. Create that different little look. Oops, oh no, bumped it. Totally cool. All right, this can also be where the tweezers come into play. Notice my square fell down here. Use your tweezers, pick it up. Think of it as interning for your heart surgeon internship. Might want to add another one up here. There we go. Now, I'm gonna use some of the opaque yellow that I already have cut up for the rest of this, and I'm gonna again create some triangles. Sorry, I shouldn't have moved that. And just clip off triangles off of some of those squares that you use, and then I'm gonna add those into and use those on top of that pale yellow. Let's see. Add these in. You know, detail your pineapple how you will. You can still layer. You could put some more squares on top of that, on top of these squares, and give yourself some more texture and some layering or some depth to your pineapple. You can leave it as one layer and not give it any extra design or accents, but I think some of the little details are kind of fun. Layer these in. Whoops. Again, tweezers might be kind of handy for these. Need one more triangle. I'm going to use my tweezers for this one. Set that right over there. All right. I have All right, that's all I want to do on that design. I want to bring this green in a little bit. There we go. All right, now for the edges, for the details, I like to use all these little scraps that we have lying around. Give yourself some other extra colors. Clip them up into different shapes. You could also cut yourself some, you know, maybe some squiggles. Maybe you do cut yourself a curve. Use your runner on those. And you could add these in. This is one option or one idea for your pineapple designs. I like to use the triangles and all of my scraps and bring in all of these colors and fill the rest of my space with these different colors and different pieces of glass. So this is where you get a lot of freedom with your piece. I'm not gonna finish all of this right here, but I'll leave you to finishing up your piece and filling in how you want around the edges and fill in some of that empty space, or don't. It's up to you. Now, let's talk a little bit about gluing our project down, because you do need to bring this project back to us. Now, with the glue, we want to use one drop at a time, and we don't want to use a lot. Too much glue is going to flood underneath the pieces of mosaic, and then they'll all get up and float away, and we don't want that. So on these smaller pieces, put 1 drop of glue at the edge. That glue is going to slide along the edge and seal that piece down. It does take about 30 to 40 minutes to seal down. So you're going to leave this project right here. And then in here on our pineapple, go for where the intersections are. So we want to, where the squares come together, we want to drop our drop of glue right there. Drop a drop of glue right next to these accents that I have on top. And then put a drop of glue on the outside intersections as well. Now, again, 1 drop of glue, let it come back, and then you can always come back if you need to. We're gonna put drops of glue up here, and then put a drop of glue at the end of each piece on your stem as well. And that'll give that end and tack it down. Now, you'll know your glue is dry when you put your finger on it and you can't wiggle it around. If you can still wiggle it, I'm gonna let it go and let it dry. When you go to move your project, you're gonna pack it up, maybe put it in a box that you got from Costco, or a lot of people have been using a cookie tray and wrapping it gently in a towel. That's been working very well. Nobody's project has come in and needed to be rearranged. Everyone's been doing a great job of gluing it down. To lift it up, to lift up your project, you're gonna use your fingers like a vise. You wanna be about halfway in between your edges. Pinch, and then squeezing in towards the middle. Keep that nice and level. Think about carrying a hot tray of cookies, and you'll be able to set your piece down and then bring your piece back in. Cleaning up, grab all of your pieces of glass. Anything little like this, send that in to the recycle. But you can take some of these good squares, bring those back, these larger pieces of mosaic, pack all that back up as well. And then the rest of this, these are pieces that I would put in the recycle. Again, dust off your board.